Welcome to the TCM Teach podcast, the business podcast designed exclusively for acupuncturists and Chinese medicine herbalists who want to build real, sustainable practices without burning out or selling out to algorithms. I'm Matthew Sabi-Smith, a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, professor, and entrepreneur. I've worked with practitioners across all stages of practice, from brand new graduates to seasoned clinic owners. And one of the common questions that I hear is, do I really need social media? And if so, what actually works? Today we're cutting through the noise. There's no dancing trends, no fake guru tactics, and no pressure to post every day. I don't do that, so why should you? We're talking about practical, ethical, grounded social media strategies that actually help acupuncturists attract patients, build trust, and grow a practice that feels ultimately aligned with them. So if social media has felt confusing, exhausting, or pointless, this episode is for you. So we're going to get started right after a quick little disclaimer. Please remember, I am simply a practitioner here to support you on your journey. The information shared in this podcast is intended for educational and learning purposes only, so it should not be taken as professional legal or financial advice. You should seek out the appropriate professional for that, like a lawyer or a tax person, whoever that might be. Hopefully you have those already. Anyway, just understand that I'm a practitioner like you, trying to help you on your journey. So anyway, with that said, let's dive in. So the first topic that we're going to touch on with social media is the truth about it, the truth about social media and acupuncture. And I'll share some personal stories and things that I have noticed along the way myself, witnessing things that I have seen practitioners do well as things that I personally think are a complete waste of time. I end up seeing a lot on social media because I like to see what people are up to, good and bad. So social media, it's not about going viral. I think there's a big trend where if you go viral, yay, it's good. But the whole point is about visibility and trust. Visibility and trust can be increased through a viral post, of course, but that's not ultimately what you're trying to do off the bat. That comes with time. So most patients are not going to book based on one post, and they're not going to seek you out because one post typically. Once in a blue moon, sure. But ultimately, the idea of repeated exposure and building trust with someone is really important. And your goal is not necessarily going to be getting a huge following unless you're trying to leverage that into some other type of business income, which can be helpful. But strictly speaking from a practice standpoint, it's a little different. It's really about finding the right local patients. So if we're speaking strictly about a practice and booking patients, social media can be good for exposure and some education, but there are other ways to leverage that to be more worth your time. Whereas if you're trying to get a following, if you're trying to sell a product or something of that nature, or a course, that might be a little different. But if you're really focusing on who is in your vicinity, then why are you sharing something with the whole world? And I tell my students this a lot when I teach practice management. I say, hey, why are you so focused on doing your TikTok dances for the whole world when really you're just trying to get someone who lives down the street into your clinic? So really think about that first. So social media is ultimately an extension of your bedside manner. It is not a performance. You want to be authentic. I can't stress that enough. You really want to be authentic in how you show up, in how the things that you share and the things you say, because people are going to judge you based on that fully. And a key thing I want to mention here is social media, it does work when it supports real relationships, not when it tries to replace them. Social media has had this trend where it almost seems like everyone on social media wants something from you. They want to sell you something. They want to pitch something. Or they want to DM you or get a direct message from you in order to sell something. And trust me, like, there's a time and place for that. I've done that in other lines of business too, but ultimately I ended up stopping because it was like, this feels weird. I don't like doing this. I'm much more an in-person type of person, yet I do show up on social media, for example, through this podcast and other channels that I run. However, that is not the bread and butter of what I do. So I just want to mention that if you're really focused on a clinic and you want to build your clinic first, don't focus on getting the whole world to follow you. Focus on your zip code. Focus on your zip code getting to follow you. So even paid ads, for example, and we'll probably talk about this in later episodes, paid targeted ads, for example, can be more beneficial than you trying to post 3 times a day, every day, doing some dance in your clinic that ultimately can actually come off as looking pretty unprofessional. And you don't want that. You want to come off as a professional. Yes, good bedside manner, warm-hearted, all of those things, compassionate practitioner is really important, but shaking your booty online is not ultimately a good way to get patients. That might actually attract the wrong patients for you. So next thing I want to mention, let's talk about platforms. There's a lot of different platforms out there. And one thing I want to tell you right away is these platforms can disappear overnight. And you can have a whole following that you've spent years building, and it could disappear overnight. So this is why I show up on podcasts. This is why I show up in email. Those are things that I own. Those are things I pay for and I own. I have control over those, and I have control over the metrics. I get to see everything. So sometimes you get what you pay for. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, these things are free. You can pay for professional versions of them, sure, but ultimately they are owned by somebody else. And when they are owned by somebody else, the rules change. You can use them and leverage them. However, I would not 100% depend on them because they can disappear overnight. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but also make sure you own something like your email list. Make sure you own, for example, I own my podcast because I pay for a distribution service. So let's dive in a little bit to some of the platforms, like starting with Instagram. Instagram can be really good for education. It can be trust building. It can show your personality if you are authentic on it. And it can be great for stories, short videos, and patient education. That could be really helpful. And you can get a nice little following that way where someone comes into the clinic, follow us on Instagram. It's pretty easy to do if you have the time to do any of this, ultimately. Meta owns Instagram and Facebook, at least as of right now. So you can actually have a business Instagram and a business Facebook page. So Facebook was the next thing I was going to mention. And this is for kind of an older crowd now. Not as many people are on Facebook anymore, or even Instagram. It's like the short form content is becoming shorter and shorter. And I'm going to talk about that too. But Facebook is still powerful for local communities. Very good leverage if you want to do something like paid ads. Facebook is actually more helpful than Instagram, because if you try to post, for example, on Instagram stories, you don't have as much control of how advertising shows up on Instagram as much as you do on Facebook. And there's courses on how to do this too. It's pretty advanced. You can figure out who to show the ad to based on like what type of handbags they buy. It's pretty crazy. Data is being collected all the time. So Facebook is powerful for local communities, older demographics, and referrals. And business pages and local groups matter more than posting trends. So Facebook is like the old school social media. When you think about it, it was kind of one of those first social medias. And then Instagram came kind of with a younger crowd, more of an aesthetic appeal. Instagram and Facebook are good for the local following, where someone meets you organically in person and then follows you. They're so saturated, it can be difficult to go viral on these platforms because they're so established. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it can be more difficult. So just be aware of that. Google business profiles. This is something that's actually overlooked quite often. So these are arguably more important sometimes than social platforms for local clinics because you can get reviews on there. Posts, reviews, and updates directly can impact booking. People can leave reviews right on your Google page. Very simple to set up. Sometimes Google requires a sort of verification of your clinic space even. I've seen that happen before. I have been a much bigger fan of Google than Yelp in the past. That's just my personal experience. Whereas I have students who are also, for example, massage therapists who have had patient referrals from Yelp. What I did not like from Yelp, and I don't have anything against Yelp, I'm just speaking from personal experience here. What I do not like is they keep trying to sell me on certain packages and like, buy this package and we'll show this so much more. And sometimes my reviews wouldn't always show up. Sometimes my reviews would disappear. So I personally did not like that. Maybe it's different now, but that's actually why I don't do Yelp. I would stick more to Google business profiles if I were to do that for a clinic. So this one can be interesting because it can be a mixed review. Also because it's something that I actually do as a podcaster. TikTok, YouTube, and X. So unless you genuinely enjoy long form or high volume content, these may not be for you. However, I would say if you do something like a podcast like me, TikTok and YouTube in particular are really great. I actually do not use X. I used X in other forms of business, but it really wasn't for me. I was not interested in it. It also has to do with, well, what's interesting to you. I have found building followings the easiest actually on TikTok. It is sort of newer. However, for long form content, YouTube is really great. So those of you that listen to this podcast, I also post all of my shows with video on my YouTube channel as well. So it can be nice if you do what I'm doing, for example, and you can have a video format. And I end up cutting up a lot of my podcasts into short little clips for TikTok. So, for example, with the TCM Teach podcast, the TCM Teach podcast shows up via YouTube, TikTok, Instagram primarily, and then Facebook is kind of like an adjunct to that. And really more one of the drivers is like a membership. So something like Patreon. So the TCM Teach Patreon. So that's where I store my memberships and resources. So I have different tiered memberships based on what people have looked for in the past. And that's why I created them. And if you haven't checked that out, please do. That is how you can support me and what I'm doing and creating all this free content for all of you. And I would really appreciate it. So definitely check out the TCM Teach Patreon for sure. The whole idea here is key takeaways. Choose one main platform and do it consistently. I personally found it very easy. I actually don't keep these on my phone. I don't like keeping social media on my phone. It can be a bit of a time suck. I do keep YouTube because I find the content to be very different and easier to leave based on how I have curated what I have on there as a consumer. However, if you can get it down, posting to Instagram, you can automatically post to Facebook if you have the pages linked. And you could post to TikTok and YouTube, and you can essentially carry the same captions over. It's not that hard. I actually have it set up on my iPad. So, for example, in the morning, if I have to post something, boom, 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 and then I'm done for the whole day. And I put content on all these channels. I like to schedule my long form content, so my whole episodes, for example, through my distributor and on YouTube and on Patreon. So things to keep in mind when it comes to social media or online in general, but definitely remember Google business profiles can be really helpful for a clinic. Next, what type of content actually converts to patients? Educational content is one of the things you can use to build authority. You are here right now listening or watching for educational content about building your business. What you can do, you can explain conditions and not just modalities. Now, here's something that I have seen a lot. I feel like practitioners talk about the same thing all the time, and that's really good. If you're curating your channels to ultimately show you all these Chinese medicine practitioners, it could be overwhelming because you keep seeing the same information. However, when you compare the amount of Chinese medicine practitioners to the amount of people in the world, the same message coming from someone else may be the only message that gets to another person because there's so many people. So what I'm trying to tell you is keep doing the good work you're doing. Keep sharing about Chinese medicine. That's how it keeps going. Keep sharing about your herbalism. Keep sharing about acupuncture. Definitely do it. Also think about what makes you unique. You are unique through the languages you speak, the stories you share, the personal stories. You'll notice in this podcast, I like to share personal anecdotes, stories. I mean, I already have in this episode, for example. So that way you get to know me and who the authentic Matthew Sabi Smith really is through the lens of my podcast. So you get to know me and we can build this relationship as you listen to my voice or watch my videos through the TCM Teach podcast. You want to make something that's relatable content and it can build trust. So you want to speak to patient pain points in plain language, but make sure it's coming from your own words. It's fine to have some jotted down notes or something. One of the most successful things I did in a previous clinic I used to run was I ran a segment of reasons to see your Chinese medicine practitioner, part 1. And I think I ended up doing through part 30 something. And people loved it. I just kept saying, did you know that you could see your Chinese medicine practitioner for, and then list the condition, and then tell them why. That actually worked very well on social media. Did it convert to patients? No, because it was going to people all over the world, but people that were patients enjoyed it. It did convert to coaching clients. So think about how you structure your business and make it specific to you. People really like behind the scenes content and building connection. That's something really good for Patreon in particular. Kind of giving a little more value. Hey, you're directly supporting me by signing up for this membership. Here's some extra. So for me, I give worksheets, for example, and I give a whole bunch of perks in there as well. But being able to share from a clinic standpoint, being able to share from your clinic, your philosophy, and your why can be really nice. And people would want to support you the more that they learn about what you do and what makes you unique. Are you a 501c3 nonprofit? Are you a woman-owned business, minority-owned business, whatever makes you unique? Do you speak multiple languages in your practice? For example, where I live, there is a huge population of individuals who speak Russian, which is pretty unique. So if you know your demographic speaks Russian and you speak Russian, that could be a really great way to get a specific group to come into your clinic. I have had students in the past tell me, hey, Dr. Matt, I don't have something that makes me unique. I don't know what makes me unique. I probably shared this story before, but it was a student who spoke Cantonese and Mandarin and English. I said, do you have any idea how unique that makes you here? Because now you have so much more of a population that would be inaccessible to an English-only speaker, because someone who speaks Cantonese or Mandarin who lives in the United States may feel more comfortable and be able to explain their conditions more clearly in one of the languages outside of English. So that is already something that makes you unique. Make sure that when you have content, you have a call to action that converts. So you hear me in the TCM Teach podcast. I talk about, if you enjoyed this episode, if you want more out of this, if you want the resources I have with this, go to the membership being in my Patreon. That's my call to action. Yes, I am giving you this content. Help me out by going here and supporting me directly. Because the Patreon is something that I have, that I run, and it is not dependent on whether something disappears as much as like TikTok, for example, or Instagram. It's a little different. It's a little more established. Could it disappear? Sure. But what I like about Patreon, you also get email addresses when someone signs up. So it also grows your email list. It's very supportive to creators. And I am not sponsored by them whatsoever. I just want to tell you things that I like, that I find are valuable. Just make sure when you have a call to action, tell people how to book with you and who you help. Speak to your patient directly. This is another issue I have run into. I have a lot of students who want to be generalists when they're in school. I just want to treat everything. You're ultimately going to treat everything. You've heard me speak about this before. At the end of the day, keep speaking to the patients who you want to work with the most, and then other people will follow as a result. But just stay specific in who you ultimately want to work with. Just give it time. So you can have a few simple content ideas or buckets that you can rotate from time to time. You could do a did you know with patient education. You could do common myths about acupuncture, who you help best, or what a first visit might look like, or clinic updates and availability. Just being transparent, showing up, but ultimately, please don't let this add to your schedule to make you burn out. Like I said, for my content, I am reusing content from my podcast to create my social media. I am cutting clips down that go onto social media. I am not making new social media all the time. That could be very exhausting. That is ultimately what a influencer or content creator does. I, right here, am a podcaster. So it is a little different. My focus is the podcast and building my membership and Patreon in that way so that I can get paid for the work that I do. Next, common social media mistakes acupuncturists make. Posting inconsistently and then quitting. I will say you don't have to post consistently like all the time, because ultimately as you have people follow you, they don't automatically unfollow you overnight, and people get so obsessed with the algorithm. I actually say, well, forget the algorithm. Just post the things that are authentic. Post a little high quality content instead of a ton of really cruddy quality content. That's not going to help you either. Someone might argue with me on that. That's just what I have found. So trying to educate other acupuncturists instead of patients, that is specific to what I am doing, but that is the purpose of this podcast. Make sure that you're speaking to who you want to work with. Using language that's too technical or too vague, we have had previous episodes on that. So if you don't know what I'm referring to there, make sure you go back and listen. Never telling people how to book. If you don't have the call to action or have your schedule somewhere, link in bio, whatever, and cool, thanks for the free information. Now I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to scroll to the next post. Comparing yourself to influencers instead of local clinics. This can be a real energy drag. Like I said, if you're following a bunch of Chinese medicine practitioners, cool, you're going to see the same information like, oh, the world is so saturated. Why should I repeat the same information? Think about how many people are in the world. Think about how many people are Chinese medicine practitioners. And if you live in a different zip code, you're already speaking to a different audience. So keep that in mind. So make sure you don't fall into what I like to call comparisonitis. Don't do that. Don't compare yourself to other people, because what you have to offer is valuable and it is unique. So keep doing it. Key takeaway here that I want to mention is clarity is always It's going to beat the creativity aspect of posting. Creativity is important, but just make sure it's clear because we're talking about a clinic. We're not talking about a fancy dance for TikTok. We are talking about, I am a business. I am here. These are the people I work with. Let me tell you how I can help you. Here's how to book. Ultimately, before you create posting of any kind, why am I here? What am I trying to create? How do I get people? Think about the road that a potential patient has to take. They see a post, they see you are nearby. How do they book? They show up at your door. That's how you get paid. Just always think about the roadmap of where you want them to go. Okay, so I like adding these into episodes sometimes. What would be the TCM lens for something like social media? I like bringing up the spirits from time to time. You've heard me talk about E a lot, kind of directing energy in a way. So if your intention is alignment and your content feels grounded, if your intention is validation and content is feeling forced, what is going on? Ultimately, we want to feel good about what we are sharing with the world. So your online presence really should be established and people should be able to expect the same thing every time they look at your channel. And if you have something completely different, put it on a different channel because then you're falling in the category of influencer instead of business owner. Only stick to what you do in your business. Okay. So if your online presence feels calm, you don't want it to create chaos in the next post. If you're about authority, don't let it look like an inflated ego. And then if it's about a service, make sure you're not creating some fancy performance. Stick to the script. In this regard, people want something that's predictable. A confused buyer does not buy. A confused patient does not show up at your clinic. So social media ultimately is not about marketing harder. It's about communicating clearly for practitioners. If you're a practitioner who wants to explore social media, be clear through the text that you create, through the aesthetic that you share, through the messages. Make sure it is clear. Next, a simple, sustainable social media strategy. There's a lot of ways you can do this, but here's just a little example. Even if you could post 2 to 3 times a week, as long as it's not too much, as long as you're not burning out, the consistency is going to be helpful more than volume. If you have a bunch of volume in the beginning and then you stop and never show up again, and then a year later, people will forget. You don't want them to forget. You want to show up consistently. If that's 2 times a week, well, then show up consistently 2 times a week, and people will get used to that. If you listen to this podcast, you get used to me sharing every week. Sometimes I may have something come up in life where it may take me an extra day or so, but so far I've been very consistent. You know what to expect. Here's the episode. Boom, boom. Use the same core messages across all of your platforms. Again, if you could reuse content and post it on multiple areas, if you're going to do multiple channels, I highly recommend doing that. Or using content you created elsewhere and then turning it into social media, so you're not making new social media content. That's a good way to avoid burnout. Batch content once per week or once per month, that can be really helpful. Reusing posts so patients don't notice as much and algorithms don't totally care. You can reuse a post. It's not really a big deal. If it flopped or it got flagged or something, just try sharing it again. And it might hit different because it's a different day, it's a different time. The math is a little different in the algorithm that day. So reuse it. It's okay. No one's going to police you on that. Spend more time engaging locally than creating something for the whole world endlessly. Just really focus on what you're trying to do. A weekly rhythm that you could think about that's really simple is 1 educational post, 1 trust building or behind the scenes post, and 1 clear booking reminder. Do that every week. And that is a way your social media could be helpful to your in-person clinic business. All right. So how social media fits into a bigger business strategy. Social media is just the tip of the iceberg. And I feel like a lot of people start with social media in business when there's so many other things they could do before social media, or even skip social media a lot of the time. But like I said, it can be free. It does take time. You can use social media to support traffic to your website, to get Google reviews, to get word of mouth referrals. It is not the business. It is one tiny aspect of marketing. It is not the business. Unless you change your business plan and you want to be an influencer, then it's your business. That's different. But I would caution you on that because, again, followings can disappear overnight. So make sure you grab those emails or something that you own. A healthy practice is built on clinical results, clear communication, and consistent visibility. So social media should reduce stress. We don't want to create it. If it's creating too much stress, then it might not be the thing for you. There are ways you can leverage it and use it and ultimately make your life easy. So I want to leave you with some closing thoughts here. Social media for acupuncturists does not have to be overwhelming. It's not about this big performance, and it doesn't have to be this constant thing you're doing all the time. Again, it's one teeny tiny aspect of your marketing for the real work that you do. So when you use it intentionally, it becomes a quiet but powerful tool to help build trust, education, and connection. Again, focusing on the community that you are going to be working with is very important. So just like in Chinese medicine, when things are aligned and not forced, results ultimately do come naturally. So here's one last thing. If you want help simplifying your message and creating content that actually speaks to patients, I walk through this step by step inside the TCM Teach membership on Patreon in the Practitioner Hub section. So be sure to check that out. This including content frameworks, posting rhythms, and real examples from working clinics. Every single episode I post has a resource that you can use. It's PDFs that I upload. You can print it out. Again, here's my call to action. We just talked about this. Here is where you can get more out of what you're listening to right now or watching right now. So in our next episode, we're actually going to be diving into Instagram Reels and TikTok for TCM. So some tips that ultimately can convert. Until then, thank you for listening to the TCM Teach podcast. And we'll see you next time. 谢谢。